Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light and this is my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a case that's about 6.5 years old. It's a little tough because it's about a small child. This boy's name is Deorr Kuntz Jr. and he was last seen on July 10th in 2015. Some of you may have heard about this case, others maybe not. It hasn't really got a lot of attention outside of Idaho. It was featured in a documentary done by David Pilates, but I hadn't really had that much information on this story before, and I wanted to look into it and see how a 2-year-old boy could vanish with 5 adults right around him, supposedly being watched by his great-grandfather. How is it possible? How is it possible to vanish without a trace? Before we get started, if you would please subscribe. It's free and it helps our channel. And if you would give this video a thumbs up, that also helps our channel. And I'm going to be giving away the Exit Light box. So stay tuned to hear who the winner is. The way I'm going to have to contact the winner, so pay attention to this, is that I will message you underneath one of your messages. And in that message, I will ask you to give me your email address. And then I will email you, and you can give me whatever address you would like the box to be sent to. All right. Now let's talk about this case and tell me what you think. Have you heard about it? Do you have ideas? Do you have opinions? Let's go. On a beautiful day in Idaho, on July 10th, a family decided to go camping for a couple of days. Nothing unusual. They were going to get away. They were going to fish. And it was going to be lovely. There was Deorr Kuntz Jr., his mother, Jessica Mitchell, also Vernell Deorr Kuntz Sr., the boy's father. Along with them, Deorr's great-grandfather, who was the grandfather of Jessica, his name was Robert Walton, and Isaac Reinwand, who was a friend of Walton's. They all went. This was a last-minute decision. Hey, let's go do this today. And by 2:40 p.m., Deorr Kuntz has never been seen again, and there has been no trace of him. They originally asked the grandfather to go, and the grandfather asked if his friend, Reinwand, could also go with them. They didn't see why not. The grandfather had a camper, and they thought it would be fine. The campsite was near to the Stone Reservoir. Now, it's a dead end. A gravel road goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and then it becomes like a circular dead end. It's way back in. It's as far back in as you can go. And they decided to go camping there. Over a little embankment, not far from where they parked the camper, there was a stream, and you had to go down the embankment. There was many trees. The stream was very calm. Just a very lovely stream. It wasn't frightening. There wasn't a lot of current, and it was far enough away from where they were camping that I think they probably felt that it would be safe and convenient. After they arrived, Jessica and Vernell went to a convenience store. She needed some feminine products. They took Deorr Jr. And when they came back, Isaac Reinwand had told them that he had gone fishing in the creek and that he had caught some fish. So they decided that they were going to go fishing too. Deorr was at the time supposedly wearing a camouflage jacket, blue pajama pants, and a pair of boots that were about one size too big for him. As the mom and dad walked off towards the creek, Deorr went with them. And they didn't know exactly where they were going to be fishing yet. So they were going to go see where Isaac had gone. So they asked the grandfather, the great-grandfather, if he would please watch Deorr for a minute. They asked Deorr, do you want to go with us or do you want to stay with Grandpa because Grandpa has candy? Mom and Dad had picked up candy for Grandpa at the convenience store. And he liked to give Deorr little treats. As soon as Deorr heard the word candy, he was headed back towards his grandfather, and according to his parents, that was the very last time they ever saw him alive or just ever. The parents walked down to the creek. They were shown where Isaac had caught fish. They went up the stream a little bit, and when they did, they saw these tiny little fish swimming in this little pool, and they knew that Deorr would love that. So Deorr Sr. went up the embankment and went to go get him, to bring him down and to show him the little fish. Not long after that, Jessica heard a commotion. She heard loud voices, and she looked up over the embankment and could make out the tops of heads. And she heard her husband, her fiancé, yelling for Deorr. That, of course, caused her to panic. She ran back to the camper, asked her grandfather where Deorr was. His response was, I don't know, right here. He wasn't right there. Grandpa had not paid attention to him. Later on, Grandpa will say that he saw Deorr by the creek, and then he turned away. That doesn't seem how one would react when a 2-year-old is by a creek, whether there's a current or not, whether it's fast running or not. We don't leave 2-year-olds by water. And none of the other adults ever saw him down by the creek. The parents were right there. So he became indignant about it. I don't know what happened. And both parents called 911 separately. Since that day, there has been no sign of little Deorr. And nobody has been charged in the connection with his disappearance. His mother and father were both named as suspects in January of 2016 by former Limhi County Sheriff Lynn Bowerman, but they were never arrested or charged. There was little to no evidence that they had committed any crime. The police had gone through Grandpa's trailer. They suspected perhaps Isaac, being a family friend, had done something to little Deorr, but there was no proof of that. Grandpa said that he had never gone into the camper and he had never taken Deorr into the camper while he was supposedly watching him, but the police didn't believe him. For whatever reason, something told them that he was lying about that. Well, of course, they searched the camper and they didn't find any evidence. And the timeline for this leaves literally minutes to have done something and disposed of a body so well that it's never been found again. After searches and searches and searches, it just seems very hard to explain. The parents have always claimed from the beginning that they did not know what happened to their son. Isaac Reinwand and Robert Walton also said that they had no sense of where the boy was when they were interviewed by police. Deorr's great-grandfather, Walton, died in June of 2019. Publicly, this case has been comparatively quiet. Apart from continued trial between the parents and a former private investigator, after months of testing at the FBI office in Quantico, investigators announced there was a bone found at the campsite in June of 2019, but it was finally determined that it was animal and was not little Deorr. According to Lemhi County Sheriff Steve Penner, the case is still open and it's active. Today, Steve Penner is in charge of this case, the lead investigator, and the sheriff of Lemhi County after winning the 2017 election that saw the previous sheriff, Lynn Bowerman, retire. When they first arrived at the campground, Jessica and Deorr Sr. said that they had put up chairs around and they had started a fire, which is where they said that the great-grandfather had been when they left Deorr with him out by the fire. Grandfather, when they first arrived, went into his trailer, and he said that he went in and relaxed in there. He said that he did leave his door open. That's when Isaac Reinwand said that he left to go fishing. As a side note, Isaac did not return to the campsite until after Deorr was found to be missing, which leaves at the campsite just the great-grandfather. The grandfather also says that he never heard anybody ask him to watch the little boy. He was completely unaware that he was supposed to be watching the boy. Although, when the parents asked him where he was, he said he was right there, which says to me, if the parents are gone and you're there alone and there's a 2-year-old, you're watching the boy. But apparently in this man's mind, it was every man for himself. And because of that, Deorr went missing. Disappeared. Could be because of that one act of defiant behavior. There were multiple extensive searches conducted throughout the mountain fields, the dense pine forest, and the waterways in the weeks and months since the boy was lost. Search and rescue teams were on foot, they were on horseback, they had ATVs, they scoured the remote campground dozens of times over many years. Searchers had even used helicopters and drones, and still nothing. Advanced teams and canine dogs were brought in to find any sign of Deorr, and searchers focused on the Timber Creek and Stone River Reservoir near the campsite where he was last seen. 3 private investigators have conducted their own investigations into this case, and I'll get into that in a little while. Differences appeared in the accounts of what happened to this boy immediately. Discrepancies in their statements became public, and officials said that both parents had declined multiple polygraph tests, and as a result, Jessica and Deorr Sr. were suspects in this case. Lemhi County Sheriff Lynn Bowman said, "I believe his parents are hiding something. There is no doubt in my mind. We gave them every opportunity to explain if it was an accident or some kind, and they have not." Bowerman believed that the case has to be a homicide, and she does not believe that the boy is anywhere near the area where she was told that he disappeared. Later, when the parents were interviewed, the father, I should say, said that they refused to be interviewed anymore. They stopped talking to investigators. They wouldn't do polygraph tests because they felt that everything they said was twisted and being used against them, and it was being made to look like they killed their son. So, to discontinue that and have that going out into the public, they decided that they weren't going to speak anymore. Of course, the police saw this as being sketchy. If you don't have anything to hide, the thinking is that more than anything, no matter what you feel, the police are thinking more than anything, you want to help them because you want to find your son. That is the top of the priority list. You are not the top of the priority list. And so you keep going and going and going. But they didn't. They stopped. The father said he didn't take a lie detector test because he was so nervous. He thought it would come back that he was lying. The boots that Deorr had been wearing were cowboy boots, and they were too big for his feet. His family said that they kept sliding off. So when people started saying that maybe this little boy had been attacked by an animal, a lot of other people wondered, well, if he couldn't walk and keep the boots on, how would being attacked by an animal keep his boots on? They were too big. They were too big. At the very least, you find boots and blood. But there was nothing. Also, keep in mind that this boy was mere feet from his great-grandfather. So being attacked by an animal doesn't seem likely. So after all this, Jessica and Deorr Sr. separated. Jessica got remarried, and she left their apartment abandoned. Investigators jumped on that. They asked if they could be let into the apartment by the manager, and they said yes. And they got a hold of everything that was in the apartment and everything that had been put in storage. And what they discovered was that the jacket that Deorr Jr. was supposedly wearing on the day he disappeared was in that apartment. It was then that police verified that they could say that they thought they were dealing with a possible homicide, but there were no arrests made of Jessica and Deorr Sr. So here's the question. Let's narrow it down to this. Did little Deorr manage to wander off, completely disappear off this planet within less than 30 minutes of being left with his grandfather? Is it possible that then he was attacked by an animal that just left no clues whatsoever? Or is it possible that little Deorr never actually went camping at all? The police say that evidence mounts suggesting that the parents never actually took Deorr on this camping trip. There was no evidence that their son was ever at this campsite. There was no fingerprints on the chairs. There was no DNA. There was no blood of any kind. There was nothing. They had told the investigators what toys he had taken to play with. Not only were they not there, but that was because they were found in the apartment as well. So what happened? Was there an accident? Did the parents accidentally do something, cause this child's death, and then decide to make up this camping trip? Let's go, get out there, somehow talk the great-grandfather into going along with the story and the great-grandfather's friend as witnesses. Grandparents can be protective. Perhaps that is what happened. Maybe that is why the parents won't talk about it, won't take a lie detector test. How is it that his coat and toys were found in their apartment? There was a fund set up to donate the parents of little Deorr, but the former sheriff, Lynn Bowerman, made a statement that said this: "These people need to know that mom and dad are being less than truthful, and they can make a decision on whether to donate based on that. We've interviewed them multiple times, and every time There are changes to parts of their story. The little things all change every time we speak to them. We re-interviewed them, but they weren't willing to tell us the truth. Robert and Isaac were at the scene, so we won't rule them out either, but in terms of persons of interest, I think that Mom and Dad are highest on the list. The family hired a private investigator, a firm called Klein Investigations and Consulting. The head of the company, Philip Klein, stated that his investigators found evidence to rule out an animal attack or a kidnapping scenario. Klein said, "We have said one thing all along in this case. The evidence will lead us to the truth, and we want to assure you, the public, that we are getting there." Klein is also a member of Deorr's extended family. Some people said that the extended family rehired him, but Jessica and Deorr Sr. said they did not. After Klein released his opinion on the case, he was fired by Jessica and Deorr Sr. They took him to court, and they lost their case. Klein alleged that the search was, quote, "a sickening example of deflection of an event that, in our opinion, was most probably an accident and a cover-up." Further, he claimed that the investigators have an opinion of how Deorr died, but cannot uncover why his death occurred, believing that the mother to be the source of the entire cover-up, although she revealed to the media that she thought Vernal could be capable of harming their child. Klein counters that she is just as skillful in committing such a horrendous crime. Klein was the second investigator to be hired by the family and then quit. Both continue to name the parents as the main suspects. Klein believes explicitly that the death of little Deorr Kuntz was likely an accident and was covered up. In 2016, cadaver dogs hit on 5 locations, including a site just 3/4 of a mile from the campground. There was no proof found at that location. In April of 2019, a new private investigator became engaged in the search, David Marshburn. He co-founded the Search for Me Foundation as part of the investigation team. Deorr J. Kuntz, Jr. was born on December 30th, 2012, to Jessica Mitchell and her fiancé at the time, Vernal Deorr Kuntz Sr., in Idaho Falls, Idaho. To his family and all their close friends, Deorr was known simply as Little Man. He was enthusiastic, he was fun-loving, he was curious. He was just an average child with an above-average love of life. And he lost that life, never to be found again. So, please leave your comments below. Tell me, what do you believe? Do you believe it was the parents, the mother, and everybody else went along with it? The grandfather? The family friend? Was he ever at the campsite? Why were his clothes and his toys found at home in his apartment? Really, that's the one that gets me. That's really, really strange. And I'm surprised that the apartment wasn't searched before. Or maybe it was and it was hidden. I don't know. But please leave your comments below. Thank you for coming. And good night.